Hello YouTube, this is Sibbles and Bits. That's right, I'm back. Tales of my demise were greatly exaggerated. Sorry for the disappearance. I was, life happens. Holidays. End of year was rough at work. Honestly, playing this game too much to make content for it, which is kind of my fault. It's supposed to be an explanation, not an excuse, so we'll just get out of there, I suppose. But needless to say, I'm still here trying to make videos. And as you can no doubt see, we're going to start today off with a tier list. A tier list of all the medical cards, more specifically, because if I was to do a tier list of all the cards in this game, not only do I not think that I'm qualified for that, but it would also take like probably 2 hours to actually give a good explanation of everything. I wanted to do a medical tier list as soon as the patch came out, because usually after a patch, everybody's asking, like, what's the best deck now? How do I build Doc? How do I build Mom? What are the cards that I absolutely need? But as I realized this patch is, as I was getting my notes together, something would come up in either my labbing or someone on the Steady Discord would point something out. And I'm sure if you played this game a lot, you already know that a lot of the things in this game don't do what they say they do. So then it became a chore of figuring out what exactly everything does so that I could actually give a good explanation and reasoning behind my ranking of these cards. So before I go into the video, I'm of course going to preface, this tier list is obviously biased by my opinion and my experience in the game. Before the December patch, I was primarily a veteran pub player. My squad was just getting into Nightmare when the patch hit. Now I do Nightmare pubbing. I have a couple of groups now that I play Nightmare with, and I primarily play the medical role. I do not have my SWAT, if that's important to anybody. It's not really that important to me. I haven't gone out of my way to try to get it. I'm going to try to be as objective as possible. In my opinion, there's 3, maybe 4 like different starters for medical, which will give you an idea of how you want to play. And just because I prefer one method doesn't mean that I think that the other are bad at all. And so I want to be able to do my due diligence and tell you about the other cards that I don't necessarily like, instead of just like promoting the ones that I think are the best and makes the game fun for me. I've also been talking with a lot of people on Reddit and the Statty.net Discord who have differing playstyles from me, so I was able to get a lot of input on cards that I don't use necessarily as much. I might even release this video a little bit later than when I record it, try and put over some footage, overlay some footage over there, over me talking, so that you don't just have to stare at this screen, listen to my not very soothing voice. Another thing I want to state is that I think that almost every medical card in the game has a use, and I notice a lot of people in this game in general, not just with like cards or medical cards, but also with like weapons and characters, they state that just because something isn't the optimal way to play the game, everything else is bad. And so that's primarily why I have the tiers as they are. The bottom tier, dead tier, is going to be relatively empty because, again, I think that every card in this game has a use. It's just whether or not it's worth it to put at the top of your deck. And that's primarily how we're structured here. We have EM tier. If you don't understand EM tier, well, what you don't know won't hurt you. And if you know, you know. These are pretty much, I don't want to say that they're mandatory, especially because we've got people now doing no card Nightmare, right? Nobody needs any card. And if anybody tells you that a card is mandatory, I honestly think that they feel like it's mandatory. But again, if people can beat Nightmare with absolutely nothing, you don't need anything. EMTR cards are so ridiculously good. You probably want to have a couple of them in your deck. They're not necessarily the first cards that you have in your deck, but they should be in there somewhere. Balanced but better is a card that does its job It does a good job, and it's probably the best at what it does. This is important to state because, especially on Nightmare, at the start of the game, you only have 2 to 4 cards, 5 actually, now that they gave us the +1. And so you can't really be screwing around with cards that don't give you the most benefit. At the top of your deck, you want your best cards so that you can do your job right away and help the team survive long enough to get their builds online. Balance but worse, again, it does its job. It's not a bad card. It's just maybe you wait till later in the game and put this further down in your deck and use it later. Would buy from a lockbox. Basically, I refer to lockboxes as those cards that you can buy out in the wild. They cost generally 200, 400, 600, 800 copper. That is factored into my decision on whether or not I would buy it, but they're not bad cards. In fact, they're generally good value, but because they're still not like, say, necessarily balanced but worse, you're not going to have them in your deck, and so finding them is good, and you'll probably want to purchase them there. Niche never buy is, I wouldn't necessarily call it a dead card. Either buying them will screw you over, or you have to have a very good reason to have this in your deck. And we'll start right off by just throwing Rousing Speech out there. Now, I love Rousing Speech. Anybody who's ever had to be in a dialogue box with me knows that I think that Rousing Speech is probably one of the funnest cards to use in the game. However, that does not mean objectively that it's a good card in the state that I would recommend that anybody uses it. If somebody were to come up to me and be like, yeah, I don't really like Rousing Speech because of the deficit, I'm not going to argue with you. Rousing Speech gives you a bunch of revive speed, 225%. It almost puts you at defib revive speed, which is very good. And it also makes it so that the entire team takes 20% less in-cap trauma. In-cap trauma resist. Now, important to state here, your trauma resist is not in-cap trauma resist. So this is one of only 2 ways to reduce in-cap trauma, and it does it by 20%. So at Veteran and Recruit, that is 2 trauma because your in-cap is 10. And on Nightmare, your in-cap's 15, so it saves you 3 trauma. That doesn't seem very significant, but again, it's a niche because on a very specific build, that build of course being Necromancer, which if you've been following the channel, I posted a video about that on like day 2, which is about systematically murdering and reviving your friends for the benefit of the team. So if you're being aggressive with cards like Inspiring Sacrifice or Avenge the Fallen, or even just using Medical Professional with the spare defib that you have to full heal somebody and heal some trauma, Rousing Speech is very good because that 3 trauma can make a difference. It's still a good factor in my opinion. However, the deficit removes your offensive slots. That is a incredibly severe deficit. You might even be thinking like, oh, well, I don't use grenades, right? I'm not a grenade build. I'm not a grenadier. Why would I care about not carrying grenades? You should at least be carrying Molotovs, firecrackers, maybe even the team's pipe bombs, flashbangs. Just because you're a grenadier doesn't mean that you can't provide benefit to the team by using offensive items. And most offensive items don't even require you to have any cards in them to be good. Another thing that I should state while I'm talking about this card is that it does not stack on team. It says that it's team effect, but for whatever reason, it's coded, I'm guessing, incorrectly. And if you grab 2 or 3 of these on team, they're not going to stack that team in-cap trauma. I don't really factor because, again, you should not be running 2 copies of this on team. Grenades are too powerful. I should also state that if I'm talking about a niche card like Rousing Speech, I will refer it in combination with other cards, but otherwise, I'm not going to factor in combining cards together. I'm going to be talking about the card by itself. I might mention this card works well with this, or if you have this, maybe don't pick this card. But that's not going to determine if the card itself is balanced but better, balanced but worse, etc., etc. Antibiotic Ointment is actually good because of the fact that it does not have a deficit. All of the other healing efficiency cards either sack your stamina efficiency or they reduce your use speed. Stamina efficiency is important for all stages of the game, unless you're using your other cards in order to completely negate the need for stamina, which is using a lot of cards just to use EMT bag. Some people still use EMT bag. They don't find it very that much of a detriment. I do, but we'll get to that one when we get there. But the fact that antibiotic gives you 20% is good, but it's not worth putting in your deck in my opinion. I would buy it from a lockbox though. This is 200 copper. 200 copper to heal better is amazing. Even if you're not trying to scale healing efficiency, I would still take this card. Amped Up. This card is whenever you leave a safe room, you and your team gets, I believe, it's either 30 or 50 temporary HP. I would probably put it in would buy from a lockbox. Before, like probably a week ago, it would be down in niche never buy simply because like you would never use it. But it's recently been brought to my attention that this temp HP will actually stack over your true max HP. So if you're at 240 out of 240 or whatever your maximum HP is, you have no trauma, it will still take that chunk of temporary HP and give it to you, which is honestly ridiculous. I believe that this is 50 temp HP. So if you're ever at a point in the game where everybody's like full on trauma because everybody keeps getting incapped, or just everyone's at full health, you're still going to gain benefit from this. And because of how temp HP works, you lose 1 temp HP every 2.25 seconds. So this is like almost 3 minutes of trauma prevention because of how temporary HP works. And if you start taking damage like right out of the gate for some reason, like maybe the boss is right outside the safe room door, or you just take some bad damage, that's going to get padded and you're not going to have to worry about it. But I still wouldn't put it in my deck. For whatever reason, this card costs 275 copper. I think that's a carryover from Meta because they were priced in those tiers. They must have forgotten to bring it down to 200, but even then, like the extra 75 copper, I would still pick this up. Also should state, yeah, this is going to happen a lot. Amped Up does not stack on team. So if you guys find this and you're like, oh, well, if it all stacks up and each one is like 3 minutes of temporary HP, then if all 4 of us have, no, it literally does not. It'll only proc once. So only one person has to pick this up, which makes it even more of a good buy in my opinion, because it's literally like 60 copper from each person. Box of bags. Box of bags I almost want to put into EM tier, but I'll put it into balanced but better right now. There's a stigma in the game that because you have all the cards that are going to improve healing items, right? You're grabbing either healing efficiency, you're grabbing buffs like Poultice or cards like Group Therapy, you've got Emergency EMT or Experienced EMT, you've got Medical Professional. Everybody has it, like, gets perturbed whenever other people pick up healing items, especially when they use them on themselves. You shouldn't be doing that, but that depends on what type of build you run. I run scav build, so if somebody feels like they need to spot heal themselves for 20 at the start of the game, like whatever, I'm gonna find like 10 more bandages. I'll take care of them when I can. Box of bags is incredibly good because once you get your build online, you should be using all the healing items But when you have cards like Medical Professional, you don't necessarily have to be carrying the med kits. You can be carrying stuff that's cheaper and therefore is more expendable, like bandages, pills, because maybe you're running Chem Courage, stimulants, you're running crazy pills, I call it, and you can just go ahead and throw those out whenever to keep everybody topped off, get buffs out on the team. With Box of Bags, you can make your teammates carry their own med kits, and then they just drop them for you. You pick it up, you use it on them, and that's like their mobile FAC. Obviously, that works better in a pre-made, but in pubs, especially on Nightmare, I've noticed that people are starting to get a little bit better. Whenever I'm running around, sometimes somebody will drop their med item and ping it because they want me to use it on them. They won't use it themselves. And having Box of Bags allows everybody to carry more meds, so you have more on hand at all times. And it's 4 slots as opposed to 2 on shoulder bags. Despite me having it up here at Balance But Better because of how powerful it is, actually, you know what, I'll just put it in EM tier, because I don't think that you should start with this, because it's not that potent for everybody to be carrying like 8 white bandages. Once you start getting better med kits and better pills, then you want people to carry more. And also, if for whatever reason you have a support who's also running crazy pills, they can also carry more pills to do what they need to do. But Box of Bags, I generally put like midway through my deck, because I want to have it there in case the game completely scuffs my RNG and decides not to give my team any med slot upgrades. Because you do want to have everybody have more med slots at a certain point in the game, because otherwise you're going to run, once enemies start dealing more damage, you just need more on the team. And so I use it more of a consistency pick midway down. I end up with like 3 med slot upgrades by the time that I get to that point. I won't take it right away. I'll wait until later and then pick it up later. Another thing to note is that as you're going through the game, you're going to be picking up intel cards that give you health. So this will have much less of an impact on you later, as opposed to if you grab it right away, and on Nightmare that's 1 hit from a ferocious common. Charitable Soul, I think this card is balanced but better. It's very good. I don't really want to put it in EM tier because I don't think that it's absolutely mandatory. One thing to note about Charitable Soul is that it is obviously a self-defense card, because it's going to heal you and give you defensive benefits as well as your target. So you're getting basically 50% healing efficiency out of this that works on you, but only when you heal other people. I should also note that I have checked this. The card states when you heal a teammate. That's probably different wording, because all other medical accessory cards state when you use a medical accessory and they work on you. This does not work with revives, doesn't work with the fibs, and it does not work on dock bandages. This is with medical items. Now, one thing that I do want to state is that, man, I really scuffed this up. I don't think that you grab it right away, personally. That's up to you. If you are in a situation, or you're in a team composition or even a skill level, that's fine. That you're taking lots of bad damage in the early game and it's getting spread out. You're taking damage, people are taking damage. And you want to spot heal specific people and also get yourself to save on meds, then maybe you'll take this early. Otherwise, I wait till later in the game when your medical items are better. And that's just me personally. I also pretty sure that I've tested this and it does not work with the trauma heal on medkits for whatever reason. I actually, now that I say it out loud, I forgot to submit that to the devs. I should see if that's intentional, but that's not how it works. Chemical Courage. Chemical Courage, I think, is absolutely ridiculous. 25% more damage. It's multiplicative. Like, this is glass cannon on somebody for an entire minute just for using pills specifically. It's ridiculous. Like, I was able to get my friend who was running a Grenadier deck to use 1 grenade to destroy a breaker on Nightmare. You're able to push out so much more damage on your team with this, and it lasts for a whole minute, which is about a boss fight. Most boss fights are actually over in that time, even if you're not using a grenadier. If you're like maybe the ogre lasts longer. I don't understand how this lasts a minute. It also works on you. So if you ever have to spot heal yourself, you have more damage. You can use that in order to help people take out specials. Again, bossing damage. Hopefully you don't need this to clear commons. You should make sure that you have your breakpoints ahead of time. And while I'm talking about this, I suppose I should also mention Charitable Soul will not give you any buff effects either. If you apply Chem Courage, it will not apply Chem Courage to you. Combat Medic, I think that it's very strong, but obviously you wouldn't start open a game with it. 50% use speed is ridiculous. You use use speed as a medical build, even though pills are only like a quarter of a second. Use speed affects them. Use speed affects your revive. Use speed affects your defibs now. If you've seen my video, that's changed since December. Use speed does affect defibs. And use speed affects you opening crates, which just makes the team faster. And then on top of that, this adds another flat 20 health whenever you revive somebody, including with defibs. This is an incredibly good card in my opinion. At the very least, I would almost say that it's would buy from a lockbox, but it's worth, I believe, 600, which is a steep price to pay, especially if you don't run Econ Medic. But I almost, if it was better in the early game, I would put it in balanced but better. I suppose if your team has lots of incaps right away, you would probably put Combat Medic up. But even then, I would wait till later in the game. EMT Bag, I think, is balanced but worse. I'm not willing to sacrifice stamina for more healing efficiency. And I would, if this wasn't down here, Antibiotic, I would probably put this on the same tier. The main problem with healing efficiency is that it's a very good early game stat, but it drops off later. Not saying that you can't stack it, but eventually when your team is buying purple med kits and you're healing somebody for 225 HP, are you really healing somebody for 225 HP? So a card that you took in the early game that was very good then eventually gets just straight up wasted. Also, in the current state of the game, you have the healing efficiency bug, which is any card that says heal should be affected by healing efficiency, but it's currently not. And so you don't really have a bunch of little heals to scale with healing efficiency. I should note, though, healing efficiency does work on reviving, including defib revives. And for that reason, I wouldn't say that it's entirely useless to grab maybe EMT bag or antibiotic out of a lockbox. When you revive people, they're going to have more health. It does not affect first aid cabinets, FACs, or the shop heal button. So just to keep that in mind. Experienced EMT, it's still absolutely amazing. I think, so in the December patch, what they did was they thought that they fixed it or broke it. I don't know. So what Experienced EMT does is when you use it in the map, it's going to give you the buff that they added to it as compensation for nerfing it, and then it'll give you 10% HP, which is also a heal, but that's on top of your true max HP. What happens is when they remove it at the end of the game, you lose that 10% that you gained, and it just shaves it right off. But it does so at the top where they store your trauma. So when they reduce your health, you're going to have the same like health value, right? You're still going to be at, say, 82 health with trauma, but your max health is going to drop down and take that trauma with it. So you're still at 82, but now you might have 100 health instead of 110 health, which was originally full of trauma. That means that you just get passive trauma heal and a spot heal, and now they have 10% stamina and stamina regen on top of it. This is basically half of cross trainers that you can give to your whole team, and all it costs is one medical item. What you can do is you can do flu shots, and as soon as you open the door, if everybody's at max health, you just shoot them with a small damage weapon, just enough so that you can heal them, and then you can pop everybody and then they all have the buff. Or you can wait till you're in the map and somebody actually needs that 10% heal as well. 10% of their max HP is a heal. That's very powerful as well. Doing it the first way is more wasteful, but you get that stamina and stamina regen throughout the map, which on some maps, having that is very important to be more mobile. But if you wait till you're going to use a health item anyways, you just get free trauma heal out of it. And 10% of somebody's life is, at the start of the game, that's 10 trauma heal. So that's almost as much as a purple med kit. It's a blue med kit, but people are going to get health intel throughout the way, throughout the run. So it's going to heal for more and more. I had one nightmare run where somebody joined in as a 325 HP mini fridge tank mom, and all I had to do was just hit her with experienced EMT once. She would heal like 40 trauma, go back up to full, and then one shop heal would heal her for like 160 because it's half of your true max health. I never had to worry about her, and she was fine. She only needed one healing item a game. But yeah, experienced EMT, if you don't have this in your deck, there's got to be a good reason for it. Like, I could see if you don't take any damage at all, but since they added the buff, even if your team doesn't take bad damage, it's still very good. Fanny pack. And we're going to assume that this is also the quick item slot too, because this one isn't here. Obviously, if you're utilizing defibs in order to heal trauma and heal because you're playing Necromancer, or you're just also carrying defibs, gaining a slot of either is what I'm talking about here. Plus one is bounce but worse. Yeah, the other two have deficits, but they're not really a big deficit. Like I said, box of bags. Eventually, you're going to outscale it. Yeah, you got to deal with that negative 10% health throughout the whole game, but that eventually gets better. Negative 10% damage on the double slot. You just grab it later when you have better items, because again, you're using it to be more consistent in case the game doesn't give you med slots. And same thing here. In fact, I would, like, if you absolutely need it, I suppose it's bounce but worse, but I would probably put it in would buy from Lockbox. It's 200 copper. Yeah, like, I would pick this up even if I thought that I had enough medical slots. There's no reason not to. Field surgeon. So after the December update, or during the December update, they fixed a bug where field surgeon was negative 25% instead of negative 50% like it was stated. When I submitted it and they said that they would look into it, I was kind of hoping that they would just, change it to negative 25% because it was, it's pretty decent. But I don't. Negative 50% use speed is so huge. I put it down in niche, never buy, because if you're already scaling like lots of use speed, like you're using headband magnifier because you don't care about the blind, you're a stronger man than I am. You have Carly on team, maybe. That used to be the reason why I would grab this. I would only grab this when Carly was on team. But now that I'm doing nightmare pubs, people rage quit a lot for the most ridiculous reasons. And your Carly leaves, and now you're stuck with field surgeon with double use bars. That's on your defibs. That's on your pills. People say that it isn't that much suffer on pills, but I don't know. I already swap off of pills too fast when they're a quarter of a second. I can't imagine half a second. It would feel glacial. I don't know. Maybe that's a hashtag weird flex, bro. But I don't know. And like I stated, everything for combat medic, right? Use speed is everything. It's opening crates. It's reviving. It now affects defibs. It didn't used to. Before, this would maybe be free on a Necromancer because with Field Surgeon and Blue Defibs, you pretty much full heal somebody. I don't know. Now that it affects everything, I wouldn't put it at dead because of the fact that if you're using use speed or you honestly don't care, You're like, hey, Bits, I'll just never revive people. It's not my job. And I'll only heal people in between fights. It's not a bit. Somebody else can run the howitzer on Act 1. Somebody else can open the crates. It's not my job. Yeah, I've been in that situation too, and the thing is that sterile conditions don't apply in the field. Something's going to happen. Half your team's going to get downed, and you're going to take 12 seconds to revive somebody. And that is, I don't know, in my opinion, that's not acceptable because that's just putting your team in more danger. Granted, when you revive them, it's going to be for 80% of their current max health. But again, people might say, okay, just take Combat Medic, right? Because like you said, Combat Medic adds flat 20, and then this heals for 80%, so that's almost a full heal with just Combat Medic Field Surgeon that counter each other. Okay, so you're taking 2 cards just to get more healing efficiency when you could use Poultice, use Group Therapy, and just heal better. And then people won't go down in the first place, hopefully. I do say hopefully, but it's very difficult for me to use Field Surgeon. And plus, like, when do you take this then? Is it down here? Like, later in the game? Because you gotta take your use speed first? Do you start with use speed, Field Surgeon, Headband Magnifier? I could see that. If you're willing to deal with Headband Magnifier or Multi-Tool, take a little bit more damage. But, so then you're going into a game. Purple tier, basically med items. The one big thing about Field Surgeon is that 60% pretty much takes your med items to endgame with white items. Your bandages are going to heal 40. They're not going to have the reuse chance. You're going to lose a little bit on pills. You're going to lose quite a bit on health kits, and it doesn't heal trauma, but you're not using health kits for heals really anyways. Again, it pretty much takes you into endgame. And again, that's why it would originally be in my starting hand. If I saw Carly on team, I knew I could take this, and now my field dressings on dock are healing for 40, which having access to 340 heals a map before you even factor in support scav, stuff like that, that's a lot of healing, and it's incredibly powerful. But getting caught with negative 50% use speed is hellacious. I don't respect it, but if you're the type of person who does, that's why it's down here in niche. I clearly see that it is a viable strategy. I just can't bring myself to do it anymore. Group therapy is absolutely cracked. I'm not going to refer to the fact that group therapy is currently the only card that works with healing efficiency. Group therapy is able to avoid the healing efficiency bug because what it actually does is make the target heal the team for 8 whenever you use a med item on them. And so then theoretically, since they're providing the heal and not the card, it scales off of their healing efficiency. Other people shouldn't have healing efficiency, so the only way to get this really to work is to use pills on yourself. But again, in order to get good healing efficiency, you're going to have to take Antibiotic Ointment, EMT Bag, Field Surgeon. I'm not factoring that into the reason why it's balanced but better. Basically what I see is that if I ever have to spot heal myself, other people get a little bit of a benefit. Maybe, if I'm even using healing efficiency. But otherwise, this is technically a self-defense card, like Charitable Soul, because if you heal anybody, you're going to get healed for 8. You can heal people with bandages, or of course with bandages, but also with pills, which is big. This also procs off of defibs. Don't ask why. That shouldn't actually be factored because of the fact that it's probably a bug. But yes, med items do proc off of defibrillators. So it's almost half of Combat Medic for that purpose. And like healing everybody for 8. Granted, sometimes your team doesn't take damage like that. It's either this or, where is it? Poultice, right? This and Poultice are incredibly good because they take your bandages in the early game and they turn them into more healing. Group therapy will add 8 heals, which is technically like 33% healing efficiency in the early game. So it's better than using Antibiotic Ointment, and everybody benefits from it. If you're ever having to heal 2 people, you now healed everybody 16, which is almost as much as Poultice. So if your team takes a lot of bad damage, right? Like everybody's getting plinked for like 10, 15 health, usually every engagement, group therapy will spot heal everybody, which will save you healing items in the long run. If your team is able to organize your kill boxes into 1 health bar, then Poultice is very good. Also, the fact that it's a healing over time is another thing as a benefit to it, but it's very hard to get a lot of healing over time in this game to the point to where it's actually an effective strategy without like really going out of your way for some jank. But yeah, Poultice also will proc off of defibs, so it technically is combat medic over time without the use speed. Again, works with pills, so if you only have pills lying around and you need to heal somebody, you can still do that, and it's almost a bandage. This is equivalent to 80% healing efficiency in the early game when your bandages are healing 25, and in the late game when your bandages are healing 40, it's worth 50% healing efficiency, which is still better than EMT bag. On top of that, if the bandage reuses, you obviously get to Poultice again. Inspiring Sacrifice is, I want to say it's balanced but better. So this is probably going to be a spicy take, but I think that this is almost EM tier. But again, like I don't think that it's so good that you have to like argue your way out of it. So it'll go into balance but better. So the reason why Inspiring Sacrifice is so good is it's basically group therapy mixed with Poultice, except it requires a life. And that is a bit spiced, but even if you're using this as a circuit breaker, right? Like your team goes down a lot, or sometimes your team's doing just fine, but all of a sudden they'll just wipe. If 2 people go down, you're now healing 1.5 HP a second. With a little bit of kiting or like good positioning, you can lock down and possibly hold a fight and clutch the run using Inspiring Sacrifice. Again, this might be my pub doc speaking here, but on launch week, this was mandatory in every deck because people were going down all the time, and everybody was getting healed. It prevented multiple people from going down at once, so everybody was living longer. So just for that purpose, like being able to heal 60 across the team whenever somebody is downed, I think is good enough on its own that this is a very strong card. However, it gets even further than that. I'm not even going to assume, because I said that I wouldn't for most cards, that you're going to be playing Necromancer and purposefully downing people for this heal, which is what I do. However, if you're going up to an FAC and you're in one of those situations where you don't want to leave the FAC, but someone should technically take it, right? They have all their lives, or they have a spare life, which is kind of important for this example, and they're just going to use it for the trauma heal, right? Like their health is relatively okay, but it's mostly for the trauma, and they don't even have 30 trauma. You can purposefully down them because friendly fire does not cause trauma. Pick them back up. You'll bring them back with 50% unless you have some healing efficiency, and then they use the FAC. They heal for 60, heal 30 trauma. Again, in Nightmare, in-cap trauma is 15, so they heal 15 trauma from where they were at. They get the life back, and now your whole team is healing for 20 each, and they're healing for 60. Now, in some cases, that may cost that person a lot of life in total, right? Because you're healing for 50%, then they're healing for 60. If they're healing for 50%, healing 60, and that's not topping them off, and you were doing this for the sole reason of, oh, well, he has like 10 trauma and nobody else has any, I guess, you're already in a winning situation, so them walking around with like 20 red HP is just fine, in my opinion. It also means that they have like 180 health, which is twice as much as a starting build, so I don't know. It's like, just for that, like, just keep an eye on that when you have this card, and just try and think about spots where you can use that. You're using the FAC to heal somebody's trauma because you don't want to waste the FAC, but everybody could use a little bit of health. You could squeak out a little bit of value of that, and that's basically a free white tier bandage or doc heal for the entire team. Avenge the Fallen is going into niche never buy. I don't think that this is a bad card. In fact, this is absolutely busted. The problem is, and I probably should have mentioned it at Inspiring Sacrifice, but it's valid now. For each copy of Inspiring Sacrifice and or Avenge the Fallen, you increase the amount of time somebody has to be incapped before they proc both cards. What does that mean? Well, if you have one card, Inspiring Sacrifice, right? Assume everybody has a charge, right? Once they go down, they blow the charge, they proc all the cards, that's per team. So if you have 4 copies of Inspiring Sacrifice, 4 copies of Avenge the Fallen, you're getting the whole gamut. It is insane. However, after you revive them, they've already used their charge. So now, due to the fact that you have 4 copies of Inspiring Sacrifice, 4 copies of Avenge the Fallen, you now have to incap that person, or that person has to be incapped 8 more times for them to proc that again. That's obviously like unsustainable. You can't get away with that. So again, like, keep that in mind. If Inspiring Sacrifice is really good, but keep in mind, if you have multiple copies on the team, preferably like 2, you have to either be in a situation where your pre-made is hardly going down without your own interference, right? Because you could use this with Necromancer and like purposefully down somebody just to roid up the whole team. But you're going to have to keep the mental overhead as the medic / Necromancer of who has already used their down or their charge. Is it available now before you start doing stuff like, sacking them at the phase C, or sacking them for Avenge the Fallen damage? So generally speaking, I would say you only want 1, maybe 2 copies of Inspiring Sacrifice. But if you have more than 1 copy of Inspiring Sacrifice, you're in a pre-made and you should know what you're getting yourself into. I would almost, like, Avenge the Fallen is in my Necromancer deck, but it's literally at the bottom. If my team's getting incapped a lot by the end of the game, I will not put this in my deck because I don't want to get in the way of Inspiring Sacrifice. If they're not, and I'm literally the only one downing them, then we're going to use Avenge the Fallen too, and we're going to try and do some gimmicky stuff where I incap somebody like before a boss or before an event, and give everybody that 15 seconds of 30% damage and 20% reload speed, infinite ammo. Because Avenge the Fallen is a great buff. It is insane. Especially when you get like 4 copies on team. You have to have an entire setup in order to do that much damage. You have to have, like, you've got Shredder going, Mark for Death, a flashbang just hit, somebody's got glass cannon, and you can encourage them. 4 copies of Avenge the Fallen does that just when somebody gets downed. And that person who gets down can also be using Shredder and doing all that stuff. And you now have 120% more damage. It's multiplicative with everything. It is insane. Like, and then of course you've got 80% reload speed, so your shotguns and sniper rifles are firing faster. You're reloading faster. You're not using ammo despite the fact that you're firing faster. It's incredibly good, but I would not use it outside of actively trying to use it. Because even then, it's, a little bit janky, because if somebody gets incapped out of, like, say, a boss or an encounter, well, you just blew that charge, and you're never going to get that again if you're doing the 8 count. Maybe if you do, like, 2 and 2, okay, maybe that person might be able to use it again if you have enough defibs or extra lives. On the topic about like necromancy and giving people lives and in-cap trauma, we have life insurance. I think this is absolutely ridiculous. I should first state that, again, this is a case of a team effect. In this case, team effect 15 plus 15% ink cap trauma resist. It stacks with rousing speech, but it does not stack with itself, just like rousing speech. So if you are trying to have a cheeky idea, I literally ran into a group of pubs that were doing this. They were like, oh yeah, we'll just grab 3 life insurances, and so then we take half in-cap trauma. And so we'll just use defibs with medical professional, and we'll just heal our trauma that way. It does not work. You only get the 15% once. So if you're going to use it, either, again, you're a necromancer or you know your team's going to go down a lot, either have one of those people take life insurance or you take life insurance. I take life insurance because I roll pubs, and again, everybody's going down all the time. And saving pubs in Nightmare, 2.5 trauma, like that adds up when people are going down all the freaking time. I'm saying that it's good for that, and I'm not counting other things. If you are aggressively being a necromancer, right, and sacking people for inspiring sacrifice, obviously, just like rousing speech, which uses your grenade slot, this will make that a lot easier on them because they'll take less trauma, and you'll heal more trauma, theoretically, because of it. Marked for death. This technically isn't a medical card. I don't know if I mentioned it at the beginning of the video, but you're not always going to be healing all the time, hopefully, right? Like, if you're using medical items all the time, you better be crazy pills, because there's no reason for you to be using healing items at all times unless everything's going that badly. Your core medical package should be about 6 to 8 cards. If your team's really good, you'll probably have less than that. If your team's not so good, again, that's fine. Everybody's learning the game. You need more medical cards. But you need to do a job when you're not doing medical. And one of the easiest things to do is just to be a damage support, right? Chemical Courage already fits the bill because you're giving somebody pills, probably to heal them, you're giving them damage. Mark for Death, it's very easy. You just ping things. It's important to note that Marked for Death does not apply twice on the same target. An enemy can only be marked once. However, you can still have 2 targets marked. And while I wouldn't say that that's a reason to rush to Marked for Death, as a medical, you've got more important things to do. So I have this down here at Balance But Worse. I would even probably put it at would buy from the lockbox, but it costs like 800. I wouldn't, like, maybe I'd buy it, but probably not. Every team should have Marked for Death if you're in a pre-made, and if you're not in a pre-made, maybe put Marked for Death like lower in your deck to help people out, because you're going to use a lot of medical cards and you're not going to deal as much damage. So helping other people deal more damage is a great way to provide for the team. While I'm talking about that, let's just go ahead and get Shredder. Shredder, I would say, is balanced but better. The reason why it's better than Marked for Death, again, just like Marked for Death, you can only have 15 instances of a Shredder on an enemy. So you grabbing Shredder and the Shotgunner, who generally people who play Shotgun or LMG will also have Shredder because they can apply damage that fast. They will pretty much have this as card 1 or like card 2 or 3. You don't stack with them. However, this will help you with your own sustain against specials as well. You don't always have a fire lane or a kill box where everyone's facing the same direction. Sometimes you have to cover 2 different areas, and so you've got your LMG watching one way and you're watching the other, just trying to take care of commons. And so you having Shredder is good in those instances. Again, I probably wouldn't rush it. You've got better things to do. But I think that Shredder is more applicable than Marked for Death in a general medical build. Also, I generally end up using SMGs, but like I said, if you're using LMGs, shotguns, because each pellet applies it, You can even apply this with your fists. I've had to do that. Nobody gave me SMG ammo. We were fighting a breaker. I ran out of ammo, so I literally just like kited around the breaker, punching it for Shredder. Any source of damage will apply Shredder. So that's, again, very useful. The only thing that I wouldn't take Shredder for is if you're doing Sniper Medic. If you're using the M1A to clear hordes using sniper ammo because no one else is using it, you could probably get away with this, but I would still probably prefer Mark for Death in that instance. Medical Expert. This card is crazy. They nerfed almost every source of movement speed in the game, right? But for whatever reason, they didn't touch Medical Expert. I don't know if they just missed it, or if they think that because you have to use an item for it, it's okay, because they also missed fire in the hole. But 15% movement speed for 15 seconds. So you move faster than run like hell, and you get the movement speed when you need it. People have soured on run like hell after the update because it got changed to where it actually has a deficit. If you get hit, you lose the movement speed. And people are like, well, I mean, what's the point of that then? Now I'm like super slowed because I should be moving at 12%, and now I'm moving at like, I don't know, negative 30% because you also get slowed by the common. Like, that's terrible. I don't get the movement speed when I truly need it in combat. Well, if you're in a situation where you need the movement speed, you have it. All you have to do is use a medical item. Again, maybe you're using crazy pills, right? Giving somebody a ton of damage. You're at a infinite horde event on Nightmare. 15 seconds will get you through most of those. And this runs you as fast as an old purple stock. I haven't done testing to see if this is multiplicative or additive. I don't even know how you would do that, but regardless, 15 movement speed is 15 movement speed. You can use it for events. Another thing to note is that it uses whenever you use a medical item for both you and the person. So if you have a spare medical item because you're playing Scav Doc, and you're like, hey, I got a free item over here, let me just top you off, and they have to like quickly run away from the party, get over to you, you heal them. While you're healing them, you're slowing both of yourselves down by like 10 to 15%. Again, I haven't tested it, but you do get slowed, and it's quite significant. So you're slowing each other for like 2 seconds, maybe 4 seconds, assuming you don't have any use speed. And now the both of you move 15% for 15 seconds. You're going to catch back up to the party. Maybe, again, you're in a infinite event, like say the CDR, Road to Hell, and somebody gets like caught behind due to a crusher, or they get exploded back, or they're grabbed by a stalker. You go back, you save them, you pop pills because they probably took damage because the event is intense, and now the both of you have 15% movement speed to catch back up to the party. Again, you can also pregame it before that event. You open up the gate, pop somebody with pills, maybe the slowest person on your team, they now have 15% movement speed. Also mentioned in group therapy and poultice, this procs off of defibs. Somebody gets down during an event and you need to move, you walk up there, defib them, now both of you guys are moving at 15% movement speed. This is because you get to proc it whenever you want. This is ridiculous, in my opinion. Granted, most of the time, you're not going to notice it because maybe you're spot healing like in the middle of a fight, and then you spend 15 seconds like in that fight. Or you're like spot healing in the prepper stash. You just find a bandage there and you're like, oh, well, we're going to leave this, so I'll just use it. And so you haven't really pushed forward in the map, so then you just spend 15 seconds like crouch walking slowly. It's across the course of the run, it's low impact, but when you need it, is huge impact. And even when you're not actively using it, it's 15% healing efficiency. It's really good. So it's like antibiotic ointment, but it saves your life sometimes. Now, I could see somebody, again, putting it down here, and that's actually probably where it should be, but it's really strong. But a lot of events in the early maps want you to have use speed. And so in this way, you're scaling your healing and providing that move speed to help you clear those events early. Talking about Handyman in Act 2. If you run in Tunnel of Blood past the Ogre, it helps you run past the Ogre. You've got the Fairy at the end of Chapter 1. And at Act 3, you have not T5 necessarily, but definitely T5. 2 maps before T5, which would be the third map. At the end of Cabins of the Lake, where you have to go past that bridge and you got the gauntlet of Reeker hordes coming at you every like 30 seconds. If somebody's low health or gets caught out underneath the bridge, 15% movement speed, get the heck out of there. It allows you to both, again, do your job, you're scaling your healing, and you're providing utility to the team. Medical Professional is its EM tier. This should be in your deck. I recently had a run on Nightmare where I did not take this because no one was taking bad damage. Nobody got incapped, or if they did get incapped, I just full healed them right back up and we just got to the safe room. But even if you're in a good situation like that, your team's very good, this is the only way to get a life back. And for that reason, it should be in your deck because you may actually need it. There's other ways to heal trauma. EMT does just fine. You have two free FACs, one in the prepper stash and one on the map. If you're good at not taking bad damage all around, will be enough, because then the one person who takes all the trauma and all the hits, namely your melee or frontline, will just use the FAC, and then that also gives a life. But even if you get 2 free uses of the FAC, sometimes those free uses are at the start of the level, especially on finales like T5, Handyman. Even if you have money, you don't always have the option of going back in the level to get access to the FAC to, again, heal trauma, get that life back. And so Medical Professional is very helpful because it's an FAC on the go so long as you have a defib or a med kit. And then, of course, like, obviously, because I haven't beaten it into the ground enough, if you're playing Necromancer, this card actually is mandatory, because if you're going to incap people for the benefits of Inspiring Sacrifice, Avenge the Fallen, even if you have life insurance, you're going to want to actually be able to heal them back. Even just healing 15 off of a defib and potentially full healing them due to the rarity of the defib, you still need that trauma heal. Otherwise, you're literally causing trauma and costing people their lives. It's funny saying that. You're literally spending people's lives to heal people. And again, maybe you're playing Necromancer and your team's so good that you make it through the level without losing lives. So you're like, oh, okay, we'll just sack them and make sure that they don't die. Like, okay, you're more of a gambling man than I am, for sure, but I would still have this in your deck no matter medical build you're playing. And again, I don't necessarily think that this should be your first card. If your team needs you to take Medical Professional on map 1, you're either A, a Necromancer, or B, you're probably not in the right difficulty. Even for the trauma heal, like, I wouldn't put Experienced EMT as your first card. Now that we have so much access to free FACs, it's absolutely unnecessary. Like, trauma isn't that prevalent. Incaps shouldn't be that prevalent. Like, yeah, it happens, but it's not going to completely kill your run if somebody's going into the next map with 80 max health because they incapped once. You can easily pivot into these later. Like, I would definitely have them in your starting hand in case you realize that everybody's getting incapped or everybody's collecting a lot of trauma. But you've got more important things to get off at the start of the game. Miraculous Recovery, I think, is balanced but worse. It's worth like 600. It's definitely not would buy from a lockbox, so if I didn't think that it was actually good, it would be down here. It might actually be there. Because you know what, just because something's going to have to be down there, we're going to put Miraculous Recovery down there. Sorry, Miraculous Recovery fans. I think that it's very good. It's basically 20%. It's Antibiotic Ointment, but it's gambling. Because 20% of the time, you're going to get double the effect. You also, actually, you know what? It might actually be dead. Oh, no. If it was, it would be a late game card. Yeah, so I would say it's balanced but worse, but let's just put it down for dead for the sake of conversation here. Because, and I'll go through it, right? You don't know when the double effect is going to proc. If I wasn't able to test it, but if Charitable Soul doesn't give you the trauma heal, I don't think that this gives you the trauma heal. It doesn't double the effect of your group therapy or poultice, your effects, your card effects. It just doubles the effects of the item. And actually, I should test to see if that doubles the reuse chance. But if it doesn't double the trauma heal, I don't think that it would. I don't know. This may not be dead. But and then of course you also got to be in a situation where can they fit double that item? You're not going to go ahead and start using this on a scav build that uses a lot of small heals with effects again. You don't really want to use this in a build that has a lot of healing efficiency because again, like what are you going to do? Heal somebody for 60 HP twice? Do they have space in their health bar? Like maybe at the end of the game, and that was kind of my point, is at the end of the game, I could see this being pretty useful. If it was actually lower in price, it would be from would buy in a lockbox. So you can use 40 HP bandages on somebody plus like a little bit of healing efficiency. Let's say that you've got we'll just throw 50% out there. You're healing for 60, and sometimes when somebody is that low, you will heal them for 120 and save a bandage, which is already something that bandages are trying to do. So, and that's again why I had it in balanced but worse. If you're strictly using bandages, like your support doc, scav doc, you have a mom running crazy pills. You run support scav. You grab all the bandages, she grabs all the pills, and everything works out in the late game. You take this whole baby. It's like having super purple bandages. I've convinced myself it's back. It's here. It's at niche. It's niche never buy. Uh, yeah, I think it's a pretty good card. I just don't use it that often. Needs of many is EM tier. If any card in this game was mandatory, again, people are doing no card Nightmare. It would be needs of many in Nightmare. Full disclosure. Not having access to lives in general makes the game much more tense. Again, you could be a very good team that never gets in capped, right? And then you can make do without this. But for a majority of teams, you're going to have access to needs of many or have mom on the team. And it's because of the fact that almost everybody assumes that the medic takes needs of many, that mom is actually good, and I don't understand why people say that she's not. Granted, in my patch review video, I did say, rip mom when it was negative 10 health, but it's negative 10% health, actually, by the way, and it slows your build down. Because you need this on map 1 or 2, you are not actually doing medical as good as you can. If somebody takes mom, even if it's, for whatever frickin' reason, right? They like her starting kit, they want to have the extra pills because they're going to run crazy pills for themselves, completely selfish reasons, or they're doing it strictly to make the team better. You don't have to take needs of many anymore, and you can go straight into being a good support instead of having to slow yourself down, making yourself more vulnerable just to make sure that everybody else can stay alive. This would be like, there's really not a good analogy for it, but medical builds and melee builds are probably the most strapped for cards, especially in the early game, because you have to have so much, you got to ramp up so much in order to actually keep people alive when enemies start escalating. You're already almost in a melee build, and it'd be like saying, oh yeah, you have to take this card that technically does nothing just because you're in Nightmare, and that feels bad. If you're playing Medic as Doc, you have to take this. If you're playing Medic as Carly, you have to take this. So unless your team's really good, you need to have this card. I think for that reason, Mom is always going to be good as a Medic. Overwatch, I think this is balanced but worse. This card is crazy. However, the 15-meter requirement between you and your target, especially in Nightmare, right? A lot of maps don't have good kill boxes in their events that allow you to kill things from 15 meters away. Quite a lot do. And you can always make your own kill boxes too, depending on where you're holding out. You don't always have to use the best cheese spots. You can use other areas utilizing spawn blocking, stuff like that. And so you can set up kill boxes where you actually get to use Overwatch. And in my opinion, when it works, it's better than Vanguard. The problem is that Vanguard is easier. It's just easier to use. If you're able to set yourself up correctly. Going back a bit, in Nightmare, very often I see a lot of pubs and teams will just create a fire lane instead of a kill box. And so everyone will just sit back in a corner and let Ridden come to them. And so you're killing things that are 15 meters away usually. But now you've got no teammates that are within 10 meters of that target. So you're not benefiting from this. Honestly, it's probably maybe a niche never buy for a lot of people, but if I know for whatever reason that I'm going to be stuck on, say, sniper ammo or even assault ammo somehow, I will consider taking this depending on the squad that I'm in. So I guess, yeah, that makes it niche. You just consider this, right? All the sniper rifles at white rarity obviously deal enough to one tap a Ridden at 15 meters. And then they have enough base pen to pass through that common Ridden, and kill at least another 3 common Ridden behind it with absolutely nothing. If you have a melee up front or a shotgun frontliner, or you're just sitting a bit back and so your whole team is in this radius, you pen 3 common, kill them, and now your whole team has 15 temp HP. That's for 1 bullet. Again, I think that this card's very strong. It's just because of the limitations, it's hard to set it up. But if you can get away with it, I don't even think you need a melee with Vanguard. I think it's that good. But again, the question is why would you have a sniper do that when melee can just lock down commons, so then you don't even have to shoot the commons, right? And the reason why I think that both Vanguard and Overwatch are incredibly good is because of where temp HP is at right now. It enables numb for your team. It blocks trauma at any value, which is a bug, so I probably shouldn't state that as a positive, but it is the state of the game right now. Utilized correctly, it just buffers so much damage. It's literally free heals for the party. Vanguard's case, just if it's not a blighted, volatile, or charred Ridden, let them have it. There's no reason to not let your melee absolutely murder every common that comes its way. You focus on the specials, and they will literally take care of you and themselves. Same with Overwatch, right? Just don't kill everything. Let the sniper just shoot one M1A round, or God forbid a Phoenix, into the crowd, and everybody gets 15 temp HP. Even if you say like, oh, okay, well, like the sniper shouldn't be like killing commons anyways. You don't have to do this all the time. You can do this literally when shit starts hitting the fan. You're looking out for specials to stumble with the Barrett 50 cal because you got the stumble mag. What are you going to do in the meantime? Just send 1 bullet into the horde every 2 or 3 seconds. You don't need all those bullets at once, and you certainly don't need all those bullets if you're using the Barrett 50 cal. You never run out of ammo. So you just send those out occasionally, and now everybody has free health. Pep Talk. Again, very strong. I have it in balance but worse because I don't think that you would start with this. Pep Talk was rebalanced in this patch. Basically what it does is whenever you are reviving somebody, you take 3 less damage. It's like scar tissue times 3, but only while reviving. And it works while you're using defibs, but defibs are fast, so it's kind of difficult. Negative 3 HP is actually a lot. You think about it, it's almost as much as a nightmare monstrous wretch does with acid. Same thing with Charred Ridden. It's as much as they do with their burn. The person down on the ground can cover you, and even if you're not using it for the damage reduction, or if you use it with damage reduction, it gets even better. But it's not going to save you from, like, say, bruisers. It's not going to save you from, obviously, hawkers, because hawkers are just going to pin you. It's not going to save you from bosses, stingers, because they deal so much damage. But if you're in that situation, you shouldn't be picking up somebody anyways, in my opinion. It's more along the lines of someone's literally about to die because they're at the end of their timer. They're in acid or surrounded by commons. You can run up there, start picking them up, and you're not going to take as much damage for it. Important to note, you will take trauma. Even though it reduces trauma or damage taken by 3, that's literally just damage. Those are two separate values. They're not based off of each other. Then, even if you're not using it for that purpose, it heals for 10 whenever you revive somebody. But Combat Medic's a little bit better than that. Safe room recovery, I would probably say that that's balanced but worse. Actually, yeah, you can't take it early game. It's not that good. But I think that you could take this instead of experienced EMT in a lot of teams. Basically, Safe Room Recovery heals 15 HP, and it heals, I think, 7 trauma. If you are the team that doesn't really take a lot of damage, and for whatever reason you don't think that you need the stamina and stamina regen from experienced EMT, Safe Room Recovery might be your option. Now, obviously, everybody looks at it and they're like, yeah, well, I don't have trouble with ammo. I'm not talking about the 10% ammo recovery. I'm talking about, again, the heal and the trauma. It's basically a free first aid cabinet, every level split amongst your team. Besides experienced EMT, you don't have access to a heal like that. For that reason, it's a lot of value. But everyone I talk to about this says, yeah, like, it's very good, but I can't really fit it in my deck because I have X, Y, or Z. If you're in a team that takes very little trauma damage, I think that you can get away with putting this in your deck. Should state, even though it's your team, right? It does not stack on team. You will only get one of these, so make sure you keep that in mind when you are buying these. Or, well, buying, but also if you're grabbing them. Share the Wealth, I would not say that it's EM tier, but it's pretty dang good. 100 copper for the whole team. As a medic, pretty much says, hey, you get 1 free shop heal. Shop heal is 50% of your true max HP. It's a lot of healing. Just because of that, right, being 50% of your true max HP, meaning that it does not count your trauma, in order for it to be worse than you healing somebody, you either have to be scaling healing efficiency, or bandages have to be on, like, a double sale. Or maybe on 1 sale, plus you want to apply experienced DMT, right? There's no reason not to use the shop heal. And because of that reason, I think that Share the Wealth is very strong. And even if people don't agree with me, hey, like, everybody gets 100 free copper. That pays for your flashbang or half of your grenade. Everybody uses money. Shoulder bag, or again, just double pockets, I think is, I would say, balanced but worse personally, but for you it might be balanced but better, right? Depends on how early you absolutely need it. I play Scavdoc, so I don't need more slots. However, if you're doing medical professional and your goal is to just stack lots of econ, buy med kits, I have them right away. I'm going to just keep 4 health kits on me at all times, and whenever something bad happens, I just erase that mistake away. And that point, it's definitely balanced but better. I would almost put this up in EM tier, but I don't always take this. So shoulder bag reduces your damage by 10%. And like I mentioned with box of bags, you don't want to be taking that at the early game if in your setup it is going to cost you your breakpoint on commons. Because again, you're not always going to be healing, So what are you going to do when you're not healing? The general easiest thing for a medic to do is either going to stumble with Barrett 50 cal and shotguns, or you're going to grab an AR or an SMG, or even a machete, God forbid, and you're going to help solve commons, because commons are going to cause a lot of the damage in the game, generally speaking, because they just chip at you throughout the game. If you get caught out by commons, they will kill you. Probably even faster than a breaker, even though they do like 70 damage on higher difficulties. If you get caught out by commons, they're still going to take you down. Killing your breakpoint early on in the game is not a good idea. But keeping shoulder bag in the middle of your deck, late of your deck, so that, again, for consistency, if I don't get any med slot upgrades, I can still do what I need to do. Plus, I might have my gun kitted out by now, and now I don't have to worry about losing 10% damage. Smelling salts, it's would buy from a lockbox. If you're actually interested in reviving people, like physically, because you think that needs to be done, and you don't want to use defibs because you want to keep your quick slot open for, say, stun guns, you carry the toolkit in your team. Smelling salts is good. Again, when I was talking about rousing speech, smelling salts is 200% now, which means that it's almost defib speed. However, I don't see putting it in your deck, but it is 200 copper. If I saw it, like if you see this and like at least 2 or 3 people don't grab this, I don't even know. Because that's 600 for an insurance policy. Like, this is a run changer, honestly, because it just means that you're less likely to wipe. Being able to revive somebody in 2 seconds as opposed to 6, not counting the fact that you might have use speed, like, say, from Combat Medic, because those are additive. Stimulants is balanced but worse because straight up, it's not as good as Chemical Courage, but it's still pretty freaking good. It no longer has move speed. It now has, I believe, 15% stamina regen, which is amazing. That's basically reload from melee. Holly melee still works, and they need stamina regen. Stamina regen is still your mobility in intense situations like, say, bossing, events like, again, Road to Hell CDR, the gates, the ferry. Having access to stamina is good, because when you have access to stamina, you can move at the least 50% faster than your gun can by sprinting. They also up the reload speed and the weapon swap speed to 15%. I think that's one of the things that a lot of people say is weird about stimulants, is they're like, yeah, why would I use this, as since you don't use, or you use stamina if you're melee, maybe. You don't use reload speed if you're melee, and I definitely don't swap weapons if I'm using reload speed. So I either use reload speed or weapon swap for admin reload. Well, weapon swap speed also counts swapping to your accessories, so it helps your grenadier out. This is varied because you're applying this to all 3 of those builds. So it helps everybody do what they do more. I think that this is very good, especially if you're already going crazy pills with Chem Courage. Why not give your Barrett 50 cal 50% more firing rate? Or not 15, because it's not 1 for 1, right? Only some of the frames are affected, but you're giving them firing rate. And then, actually, you know what? That might be who uses all 3 of these stats, is admin reload Barretts. Anyways, Sunder. I'm going to say niche never buy, but note that I actually think that it's here. The reason? You can apply Sunder with your fists. Yeah, so just like you can apply Shredder with your fists, you can apply Sunder with your fists. All you have to do is punch something, and it takes 20% more damage, which is almost as much as Chem Courage does for your team. Yes, you have to get within melee range, and not everybody's crazy like me and is playing melee doc. You can also use that for yourself. Something rounds the corner at you, and you just bash it with your standard bash. It's likely to stumble if it's already taken some damage, or you hit it in the weak spot on some of the lighter commons, right? If it's a tall boy, bruiser, you don't stand it, just run, right? But if you're able to bait the slam, then bash it and then run. But If it's a stalker or a stinger or a hawker, you can just bash it in the weak spot and then it's going to stumble and then you can take it out yourself even if you don't have damage. Now, a lot of people would say that's still not worth my deck. Again, Medic is very strapped for cards. I can't fit that in there. I'm just saying that you can use this, especially if you're, again, niche, because if you're melee doc, then you're going to be using Sunder most likely to help your team. Support Scavenger, I think, is absolutely EM tier. I think Support Scavenger is better than Money Grubbers, and I'm tired of pretending that it's not. Going Econ, Medical Professional is good. I'm not saying that Support Scavenger is definitely like 100% better, but you can only buy so many healing items at the start of the match, and finding more medical items in the match due to Support Scavenger has a benefit that's different than just buying them. Obviously, if you buy them, you can get them on sale, but you still have to have the pockets to fit them. Support Scavenger, or Scav Doc in general, I can just take Support Scavenger and say Poultice or Group Therapy, and I'm healing people with almost double the efficiency just throughout the entire map. I don't have to have pockets. I just pick it up, I use it, and then we keep moving. Technically speaking, if you have pockets and you filled them up, you still have access to that, but you had to spend money and take cards to get money for those items when I could just take 2 cards and heal theoretically more than you can. Again, this is sounding a bit subjective, I suppose, but that mentality, right? Like, I don't need to leave the safe room with more med kits. It's the same idea as like medical professional, right? It's actually the opposite. There's only 2 FACs on the map, and you can't choose where they are. Medical professional is good because you can provide, air quotes, an FAC once they get to blue rarity medkits. It's more cost effective, and you can do that anywhere, right? You don't have to look for it. Whereas the support scav mentality is, I'll just find it and I can see it through walls, so I'm not going to like lose any, and I'm going to use those where they're at to heal people. And you can get a little bit like micromanaging with this if you do have a stack of med slots, right? Like say 3, you can take your bandages, go a little bit forward into the level, drop them, go back, grab all the other bandages that are lying around, and then you can like bunny hop them through the level. I generally don't do that unless there's a big event coming up like the Swamp and Pain Train or Pain Train itself. I'll ferry them up, or I'll just have somebody else carry them. But you'll never run, in my opinion, you very rarely run short with Support Scavenger and another healing benefit, unless you're, playing Nightmare on pubs and everybody's constantly going down, in which case all those heals can't save people all the time. That is actually all of the medical cards, it turns out. Yeah, that's all of them. I think that took me like an hour and a half. Hopefully, it wasn't too rambling. Those are my thoughts on all of these cards. Again, as a primarily solo pub Nightmare doc, I have a couple of groups that I play with. I might, in case, like, say, somebody else is definitely going to take Needs of Many, or somebody's playing doc or mom, I'll swap one out. But I generally play the same deck with or without pubs, because I pretty much am playing for the worst contingency when I'm playing with pubs. So with a group, it's literally almost too many heals. Like I said, one game I didn't even take medical professional. Just another reminder that obviously play whatever you want. If I was to throw it out there, I'd say that probably the best cleaners for medical is Carly, Mom, and Doc, but don't let that opinion or the opinion of others sway you into what builds you can play, what cards you can take, or what characters you can play to play those builds. Everything is in your deck, and every character has something to provide to every build, even Jim, right? Like, somebody tried to trigger me the other day and said, oh, yeah, well, melee doc, what if I told you that I was playing Jim medic? Like, Okay, so you have ADS speed, like what's the difference between that and, you taking the Barrett 50 cal to stun specials as Doc because no one else is using sniper ammo and you're just keeping specials off of your team, except now you're giving everybody weak spot damage for the boss. Granted, it's a small amount, and sometimes you have damage, and you also have aim down sight speed. What's the difference? Like, honestly, I don't think that a lot of people will argue with me, but I don't think that Doc is necessarily the best medical character because, again, Carly gets quick slots and defibs are pretty cracked. Mom can go straight into a medical build. She doesn't have to stop. And the way that I see it, Doc's talent is basically support scav light. You get 3 white bandages. If you have healing efficiency, it's better. They can't proc effects. Granted, it's not quite support scav light, just like Breakout isn't the same as Evangelo's talent, right? Because you can carry those bandages regardless of what you have in your med slot. But I think that because of, if you look at all these effects that I have up here, right, like poultice, group therapy, it can't proc chemical curl. I mean, obviously it's not pills. It can't proc charitable soul. It cannot proc medical expert. I think that medical cards are so strong that Doc's free antibiotic ointment and 3 free bandages. Obviously, like I said, I'm not saying that it's useless. It's providing those to that build, but that's the same as like if I'm playing melee Doc, right? Like I am just basically a frontline melee that clears commons and also gets to spot heal people. That's all that does. The one thing that Doc provides that I think is truly good in this game is the team trauma resistance. It adds up so much, and there's no way to really get that besides like if you find durable in a lockbox out in the wild. And that said, I'm not trying to downplay her, right? Like I main her for a reason, love the character, but also she's just so good at protecting red health, both with the trauma resistance and the spot healing, and the free healing efficiency is honestly whatever, but it's nice. If nobody gets incapped, then nobody takes in-cap trauma, and you're preventing all other trauma by 25%. It's very good. Before I leave, I should probably mention the elephant in the room, right? Because a lot of people are going to say, right, but Doc's healing efficiency is actually in a separate bin, so it's multiplicative with healing efficiency for pain pills. Yeah, it's multiplicative specifically for pain pills. So it's probably a bug because it hasn't worked that way until now when they just added it for pain pills. And also medical experts, 15% is as well. I don't rate that highly. Like, let me just talk about medical expert, right? Like, okay, so it's multiplicative with healing efficiency for pain pills. Let's take purple pain pills, heals 70. If you have field surgeon and medical expert, right? 60% from field surgeon plus 15% more from medical expert, that 70 is going to go up to like 128.8. If you just used antibiotic ointment, it would heal you 126. So you're gaining an extra 2.8 temp health. Is that really worth it? Or is medical expert correct because it gives you movement speed? Same thing with Doc. That extra 5% would bring it up to 130. You're getting an extra 5 an extra 5 temp HP over other characters because you're Doc. I mean, granted, they don't have the antibiotic ointment in the first place, so you're actually gaining, like 30, but it's, again, still basically equivalent to taking antibiotic ointment. So I definitely don't get worked up on that. Same thing with another one is group therapy, right? Group therapy, you have to heal yourself because you have healing efficiency, and that'll cause the splash of 8 to be increased by healing efficiency. So you're just popping, like, sure, you can pop pills as reaction and heal everybody, but you have to be carrying pills because you're not always going to have that health available if you're using bandages, because after that you're going to just full heal yourself and you can't do it again. So then you just use pills to spot heal everybody for maybe 20 health, so an extra 12 if you take everything else available to you. So you're using 5 cards in order to heal everybody for 20. Okay, like that is pretty good. But then what are you going to do? Wait another 2.5 seconds for your 1 temp HP to go down so that you can do it again? And you're just going to pop pills like this? I don't know. I don't know. The bugs in medical cards, and especially on dock, isn't high impact enough for me to even consider them. Like, there's even another one, right? If you take shoulder bag or fanny pack, right, anything that increases the amount of slots that you have as your starter card, specifically as dock, it doesn't work for other characters, you will get an extra bandage. Okay. So I used shoulder bag for 1 extra bandage instead of just taking support scavenger for 4 to 5 extra bandages. Like, granted, you can also carry more bandages. So if that's your strategy, right, is that you're going to go into map 1 carrying 3 bandages, then by all means. You're going to reduce your damage at the early game or just take fanny pack for the purpose of that. Anyways, that's my opinion on all the medical cards. Again, should probably state I'm not that good at this game, right? The pubs that I play with on Nightmare still lose. The squads that I play with still lose occasionally. I'm not good at shooters. I'm literally just obsessed with keeping people alive in this game. So that's why specifically I did the medical tier list, and I hope that it was informative at least, gave you another viewpoint to look at. If you disagree with any of my rankings of these cards, or you have anything else that you want to put in, just go ahead, put them down in the comments below. We can have a conversation. I'm perfectly fine with that. And until next time, catch you round.